Thank you, Jose, for inviting me here today. So yeah, so I had this Twitter discussion with Gitze and asked where would people want to hear this talk. But honestly, I don't like talks myself that much. So instead, I'd like this to be more of discussion together. So in a way that we together think about the things that matter in your life and in your work. Because there is the saying that knowledge is only a rumor until it lives in the muscle. And for me, that means that if it's just words said by me, it's just rumor. If it's something that you might live and you live yourself, then it's actually knowledge. So about empathy at work and how to be a team and why empathy matters. So yeah, I'm going to have a brief, like short topics here, and then I'm going to invite you to breakout rooms, and we'll have then small discussions there, and then we come back here in the main room, and hopefully you can share some of your ideas, some of your thoughts, and those will not be on the recordings that will be published later. I am Salmi. These are the four things I do, sort of for a living. So I'm a hiking guide. I am a communication trainer, so I do train people on NVC or similar communication skills. I am professional supervisor, which is sort of like facilitating retrospectives, but the clients are nursing homes or schools or hospitals. And then I'm developer at Brighter. Yes, I love to code. I mean, I really love coding. That's one of my passions, and I love like all of these things here. But programmer by heart, that's me. So today we're going to talk about teams, and one of the questions here will be, what is a team and what is a work group, and why does it matter? And just to make this really collaborative, I would like to Jose create breakout rooms for 3 to 4 people, where you could think about this question: that what is team, what is a team, and what is a work group? So this is the ideas that I'm sharing now is based on these three books on Accelerate, Dare to Lead, and the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And then like the trunk of the tree, then what the discussions will be based today is on empathy, culture, and trust. And the leaves, so what are the things that we might learn or find today is these topics of what is empathy, how culture affects performance, and what performance, maybe about how trust is built, and give some inspirations for tools and how to take this into your like own work life and even home life. So this is sort of the map for today. So we start by talking about culture, then about high-performing teams, and from there we could go to technical agile, into DevOps things on testing, TDD, but we are not going there today. But we go towards trust, empathy, and nonviolent communication, NVC, and there is the summary too. There's a lot of workshops to be done on that end too. So my goal today is to inspire every one of us. Maybe if there is like some new ideas, that would be perfect. And yeah, like thinking positive, because that's also what I like to do. So let's start from the book Accelerate and why culture actually matters. So these are, I say now, quotes from the book. And in the book, Nicole Forsgren says that this sociologist Ron Westrum developed this topology of organizational cultures back in the 1980s, and that the theory posits that organizations with better information flow, better communication, that is, function more effectively. And according to Westrum, this type of organizational cultures have several important prerequisites, and these are listed here, which is a good culture requires trust and cooperation between people across the organization. Second, better organizational culture can indicate higher quality decision making. In a team with this type of culture, not only is better information available for making decisions, but those decisions are more easily reversed if they turn out to be wrong, because of the team is more likely to be open and transparent than closed and hierarchical. Finally, teams with these cultural norms are likely to do a better job with their people, since problems are more rapidly discovered and addressed. So these are quotes from the book Accelerate. So the three levels of what Westrum has is pathological organizations, bureaucratic organizations, and generative organizations. Pathological cultures and pathological organizations are such that they are characterized by large amount of fear and threat. People often hoard and withheld information for political reasons. So what matters is how am I seen by my colleagues or fellow co-workers. Bureaucratic cultures, the rule-oriented cultures, protects departments. These departments want to do things by the book, by their book. So for them, rules are super important. And then the third level is the performance-oriented cultures, where the focus is on mission and how do we accomplish our goals. How everything is subordinated to good performance, to do what we're supposed to do. So basically, if I recap what the three things you mentioned from the breakout rooms, you mentioned about communication, which is the base for the Westrum theory, shared goals, objectives, which is again more on the generative cultures, one of the more focus points, and co-creating things as a team instead of doing own things. So yeah, everything you said already follow very nicely the Westrum topology. And here, this is like what are characteristics of these cultures. So I'll just take a couple of one from the generative cultures. So high cooperation, yes, that means like shared responsibility, maybe between building, deploying, maintaining products. Messengers are trained, so we do remove the blame from the culture, and when we remove blame, we remove fear. When folks surface problems more, which also results that problems will be solved more efficiently, and also then this helps us to create safe to fail experiments. We share risks. We encourage bridging, like break down silos. We co-create. Let failure to lead to inquiry. So this is about blameless postmortems. We ask questions, what caused the failure? So we try to improve the system. So take a failure as opportunity to improve the system. And then implement novelty, which is safe to fail experiments, maybe default to yes, default to open, have proposal boards, how to change processes or ways of working. Those are just some examples of possible things we could have. This is just some questions that are being used in. I think these questions were in the Accelerate book. So Westrum on Teams, and there's this Likert scale questions from totally disagree to totally agree, and from this they saw that Forsgren, when they made the study, that this has quite an effect on for example, on organizational performance, but more on that later. So this is like some parts of the what they found out on this scientific study on DevOps was that organizational culture, which is depicted by the eye here, that has positive correlation on software delivery performance, and software delivery performance has positive correlation towards lean product development. And in this case, it meant in the book, small batches, making workload visible, and customer feedback and team experimentation. And that again, like lean product development, has positive correlation towards Westrum cultures. And what I think is quite interesting is this part. So from like, what was this? Software delivery performance and Westrum cultures, they both have positive, what is it? Correlation towards organizational performance. And that's what I think it's super interesting things. So one of the key learnings here today is that culture really affects software delivery performance and organizational performance. And now at this point, I would like again have a bit of breakout rooms, maybe 3 minutes again. So Jose, if you could do that, where before you, I'll just tell you what I want you to talk about. I'd like you to talk about Westrum and what I just said, and what did you hear about the Westrum organizational cultures, and does it make sense? What's your experiences? What is something you want to share in the small group? All right, so let's continue towards trust. So there is this project Aristotle that has been talked in many conferences and meetups a lot lately, and that is this Google's study that they wanted to know what are the common factors on high performing teams in Google. So it was a 2 years project with 250. They figured out they did list 250 attributes against 180 plus active teams, and they wanted to know what matters, what are the attributes and characteristics that matter and the characteristics that don't matter. And they were pretty surprised that the results said that it's less about individuals and more about interaction and structure. And even going even further with that, the most important thing was psychological safety, which means that if people feel safe to take risks and to feel vulnerable in front of each other, so that is the most important thing. Then there is dependability, that people do things on time. There is structure and clarity about roles, plans, goals. There is about the meaningness and impact of the work. So what they also found out that what do not matter at all, so what don't have this correlation is co-location, nor individual performance, nor seniority, nor consensus-driven decisions. So those are not things that have correlation towards high-performing teams, according to this Google study. So then I think about also from another point of view. So this is from the book 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which is this novel, fictional novel, where the idea is that it sort of builds down from individual or work groups towards a team. And the idea is that if there's a lack of trust, that means that there's fear of conflict. And if there's a fear of conflict, there are no other opinions. People don't dare to say their own opinions in meetings, which means that there is no commitment, because I'm not being heard. My opinions is not being listened to, so I don't commit to decisions. And lack of commitment, with lack of commitment, there is no accountability. And with lack of accountability, that results to inattentions to results. So again, here, trust is in the core. So psychological safety and trust. So that is like in the core of high performing teams. So I did draw trust in a diamond here, inside the iceberg. So what really matters is trust. So that is like one of the key learnings, is trust is key element of high performing teams. Nothing new for you probably. Then also when being reading and listening to Brené Brown, who says that she's researcher, storyteller, author, and speaker. And in the book Dare to Lead, she said that she says that trust is earned in the smallest of moments, not through heroic deeds, but paying attention, listening, gestures of genuine care and connection. So this is how we build trust, by listening other people, by paying attention, by being there with them, by having human connection with the people. So that's also one of like the key learnings, is that the trust is indeed built in the smallest of moments by listening. So again, I zoomed a bit further towards trust, and I see listening, attention, connection, and care, which basically is empathy. So if thinking from this perspective, core of trust, so how do we build trust? One core or way to do that is empathy. And now the question is, what is empathy? And why is it so different than sympathy? I'm not going to share you this video now. So this is 3 minutes video, and I really encourage you to look this up, because this is brilliant, brilliantly drawn and depicted story about empathy, and it's taken from I think it's Brené Brown is having a lecture somewhere, from which this is then taken and animated. But what she says in that video is that there is this four elements of empathy, and this comes again from studies, and I don't now remember what was the name of the person who, Therese Weissman, yes. And when she studied empathy, she figured out that there is 4 characteristics, 4 elements of empathy, which are perspective taking, staying out of judgment. Then third one is recognizing feelings of other, and fourth is communicating that to them. So what I've done is, like, the first 2 levels, like, sorry, wrong way. Perspective taking and staying out of judgment is something that can be done in our heads, in our brain. So taking the other person's opinions and experiences as true, that has happened to them, and something that really is true for them, and without judging them. Then the other 2, so that is also cognitive empathy, and then there is emotional empathy, which is about feelings and needs. And then third level of empathy can be thought of compassionate empathy, which some say that it's like empathy to action. And this is again something I want to really make sure I get these words, understand these words better. But I wanted to have this here because April Wenzel has this compassionate coding initiative, which is really cool thing. I saw her having a keynote in one conference last year. Really enjoyed it. So 3 levels of empathy, and empathy is perspective taking, cognitive empathy, and then recognizing the emotions, feelings of others, and communicating that, which is emotional empathy. Yeah, now I'm going to oh yeah, key learning. Time to do some how-tos. So this is like basics of the things, and now I want to go into a couple of how-tos. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce you a couple of these how-tos, and then I want us to have longer breakouts where hopefully we can then, and you can discuss how and what you could see in your own workplaces. So first, I'll introduce these 7 elements of trust, and again, this is from Brené Brown. And what I'm going to do is this is again this kind of mnemonic with boundaries, reliability, accountability, vault, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. And I'll show you this, share this. So again, this is something that you can Google yourself. Quite interesting thing to read. I tried to zoom it so you can read that for a while. And again, this was something that Brené Brown came to find out this from her studies on yeah, she studied shame and empathy. Yeah. So these are things that she found out from her studies. And I give you this in order to, if again, you mentioned about the book club, and I really like that idea. So the same thing here is that if folks want to think themselves, for example, at workplace, and make things explicit, like what are some things we do at work, that how do we make sure that our boundaries are very strict? How do we make sure that we are reliable, and how do we like take what are our ways to not enforce but to help us to fulfill the integrity, that we choose courage over comfort, we don't take the easy road always. So that is something that I wanted to share to you a bit also. Then there's another tool that I've studied a lot during the last year or so, almost 2 years. I studied NVC, nonviolent communication, a lot, which is a nice way to really listen empathically other people. And this is like very short NVC steps where we try to focus to be on this observations, feeling, needs, requests, and not on interpretations, thoughts, requests, and demands. And typically we and people live in the world of interpretations, thoughts, requests, and demands. And we're not taught to talk about observations. We're not taught to talk about feelings. So when we want to talk about feelings, we often say our ideas or thoughts. And we don't understand necessarily that we are all needy and we all have needs. Instead, we might ask requests, and then if other people don't fulfill those requests, that might be taking, or I might feel offended for that. So living in this NVC, in this called also giraffe side on observations, feelings, needs, and requests, that is more like clearer side. But that is one way to empathy. And here what I try to do is like how NVC can be mapped to boundaries. And this is just one step, how boundaries, how certain aspects and certain processes, certain ways of working or being, we can decide at work. So for example, that there is this one way of saying no. So if I want to say no to something, so there is a way for me to say no. And if I know how to say no, and if all my colleagues know how to say no, then it's easy. And then we can trust, for example, that if my colleague decides to help me and says yes to my requests. I know that this person does that out of the joy of helping me. And these are things that we can learn, and we can have courses on. So there are ways to how do we listen other people's judgments. So if other people judge us, or how do we interrupt with grace? So if there is a meeting that people just keep on talking and talking and talking, and I'm not really interested anymore. So how do I interrupt with grace? So how do I choose courage over comfort? Then there's also another one which is about the core protocols. I wanted to bring this also. So one way, so there are a couple of practices in core protocols that you can use, and also these core protocols can be mapped. Again, this is just my mapping to the boundaries. And there is a link of the core protocols, so if you can Google them. But the important part of core protocols, of course, if they're based on commitments. So what I'm with this idea is to show that there are like different, not processes, but ways of communicating and working with people that we can make into the culture that follow these seven elements of trust. And with teams together, when we talk about these 7 elements, so we can figure out how do we want to build trust together. So now I want us to go to breakout rooms and talk about these things. And you can Google for the boundaries this. So if you Google for Braving and Brené Brown, you'll get this. And what I ask you to do now is, in your teams, in these breakout rooms, you discuss what are like things that you do at work that map to some of these categories. And for that, I would want to, because this is like really in the end, so I would like to give you more time for this. So maybe 8 minutes for this part. So maybe we'll just continue to the very to the very end, where I try to tie everything together. So with this slide, I'm trying to say that if we want to have the generative performance-oriented culture with high cooperation, and where the messengers are trained, risks are shared in this culture of teams. So what could be key enablers for this? So high cooperation, of course, trust is key enablers. Listening is key enabler. Also being vulnerable in front of each other, to have connection with people, to be accountable. And then I added this yes and thinking here. And then what could be tools that we could use to do this? And these are just tools that are currently used in in the company where I work. So, and that's like the important thing, is that the tools are things that work in certain contexts. And what is interesting then is what are the tools that work in each individual context? What are the things that make that are true, that are the like true knowledge that is lived in the real life? So these are like a couple of things that we do in Brighter, is that we have check-ins and we have reaction rounds we do train and we do start training people into NVC, and we have some of these core protocols used also in our daily work. We do a lot of work together, so also we have continuous delivery practices, and we have, so here it's NVC, but what we have is we have regular one-on-ones, so anyone can have one-on-ones with anyone on the organization. So I can go to anyone on the organization and ask for a half an hour one-on-one, and everyone knows that's part of the culture. So that's what we basically do. So that's like one of the core ideas, is that if we want this kind of West Room culture with, for example, high cooperations where the messengers are trained, risks shared, breaching encouraged, failure leads to inquiry, and novelty implemented. Yes, one of the key aspects for that could be that this is discussed with the team and openly and honestly, like discussed with the book club. There are a couple of key enablers where trust and empathy is definitely key enablers, but not the only key enablers for this. And then how do you map what are the tools that are used in your life and your workplace? So there are a lot of these links that I've used. The three first are the books, then there's the video of the Brené Brown, which I mentioned, also the 7 Elements of Trust, NVC book, and the also about core protocols. I'm actually guessing that is the last slide I have. But now I would be willing to have any questions on Q&A, and maybe we could stop the recording